This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic!
What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is February 27th, 2025. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host Kevin Tucker. And you may or may not be listening to the Sixth Man Show for the 500th time, because this is our 500th episode. Kevin Tucker, what's going on?
500 is a lot, dude. Like it's a lot. And if you think about it, let's say the average of these is an hour. It's probably a little bit under an hour, but let's say it's an hour.
So like we're talking cool 50 minutes easily.
Right. But that math is a little harder. So let's just say it's an hour. All right. So we're talking 500 hours of recording time. That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of minutes. That's a lot of seconds of our lives. And some of you have listened to almost all of those, by the way. We have some true wackos out there that have been around since day one. I haven't even been around since day one. I've been around since like episode 90 something, I want to say it was. So anyway, yeah, this is crazy. Glad to get to obviously do this with you. Glad to get to share a little very special guest we had in this episode. Two of them, really. We had two special guests in this episode. So glad to get to share those with people watching and listening. But yeah, happy 500 to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, like roughly, if you started listening from like beginning to end, I just did some of the calculator math here. It would take you almost 3 weeks to listen to every single episode, like continuously, 24 hours a day, almost 21 days. Yeah, so pretty wild. And yes, Kevin alluded to a couple of special guests. One, our guy Fawzan Amer, who, if you've followed us on Twitter for any amount of time, obviously he is a writer for the show, or not writer for the show, a writer for the website. Writes articles about things that are going on schematically throughout the season, different guys' developments, things that Jamahl Mosley is doing, all that kind of stuff. You can find his writing and our other articles over at the6manshow.com. But he also just does a great job of covering the team. Like, for a guy who is admittedly not an Orlando Magic fan, is just a basketball fan and wanted to cover a team, and obviously the level of access that we're able to have and how close we are to the team was a big benefit for him when he first came on. Like, I want to say like 3 years ago now at this point. Like, it has been a minute. But genuinely, for a dude who lives in Dallas, does as good of a job as anybody, covering this team on just like a day-to-day basis, talking about shoot-around interviews and pregame interviews and postgame interviews and injury reports and what's going on throughout each game and next day film breakdowns, all that kind of stuff. He does such a great job. So we talk with him a little bit later about what happened in the Cleveland game, which we're not going to talk about because it was terrible, and we talked about it a lot with Fawzan. But we're also joined by Orlando Magic head coach Jamahl Mosley later on in the episode, and our goal going into that was really to give Magic fans kind of a peek behind the guy that you see on the sideline and talking in media scrums and all that kind of stuff. But obviously we also talk about like, hey, what's been going on with the team, and why do you think some of these struggles are happening, and all that kind of stuff. But we also were not shy about just like sharing our appreciation for Coach Jamahl Mosley, because think back to where this team was 4 years ago, when Steve Clifford said, hey, I don't want to be here through a rebuild, and bounced, and where this team was at that point. And although things aren't exactly great the last few weeks, nobody is hiding from that or shying away from that. Jamahl Mosley has taken this team like leaps and bounds forward from where they were. And a lot of the things that we love about this team and have loved about this team is directly due to Jamahl Mosley and the culture that he's put in place. So we hope that you all enjoy the interview. Again, we'll get to that a little bit later in the show. But yeah, Kev, 500 episodes. To think that I've done anything 500 times, and I've done like, I don't know, 490-ish of these. I would probably guess. I've missed one from time to time. But yeah, to think, a little like last week, I think was like the 6-year anniversary of the first pod coming out. And again, to think 500 episodes like that, it's just crazy. Like, there are tons of shows that have been on TV for years and years and years that don't have 500 episodes. So to think that we've created more episodes than, I don't know, like Breaking Bad doesn't have 500 episodes, and Breaking Bad is like a super long show to get through, to watch everything.
Greatest show of all time, by the way, if you ask me. But yes,
it's right up there with Boy Meets World, but that's neither. That's not. You're right. It's not up there with Boy Meets World because Boy Meets World is better. No, I might be a little bit biased. Depends on what you're looking for.
You can't compare those two. That's like
two different this is what I always say about like things like that. Like nobody would argue that Chick-fil-A is not better than McDonald's, right? Like the chicken nuggets, right? But if you're in the mood for a chicken McNugget, nothing can satisfy that craving other than McDonald's,
right?
So that's what I would compare that to.
Yep.
But yeah, 500 episodes is crazy to think about. It's crazy to think about someday we will be at 1,000 episodes potentially. Like just really, really wild. And we'll do some more of the more sentimental stuff towards the end of the pod and look back at the last 500 episodes. But yeah, this is episode 500. Shout out to the Magic PR team for, letting us talk to Jamahl Mosley, and thank you for Jamahl Mosley for taking the time, obviously. And yeah, hope that you guys enjoy this episode. But another thing that you will enjoy is there's a special surprise watch party that the Magic have planned. So if you recall, around Halloween, we were supposed to have a watch party at Rivals on Wall Street that due to some unfortunate circumstances, that was rescheduled. So that is now being rescheduled for March 8th, which is a Saturday. And your Orlando Magic are set to take on the
Milwaukee Bucks.
Milwaukee Bucks. That is correct. Thank you for reminding me, Kevin. So yes, Magic are taking on the Milwaukee Bucks Saturday, March 8th. So there will be a watch party down at Wall Street, at Rivals on Wall Street. That game, the tip-off is at 8 o'clock. So that watch party is going to get going around 7:30. So if you're looking for something to do that night, come on down to Rivals on Wall Street. Again, Magic are taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. That game is going to kick off at 8 o'clock. And then the following Friday, the watch party that we've been talking about at Stadium Club. Again, just awesome venue. Really looking forward to both of these watch parties here. But the 14th, when the Magic take on the Minnesota Timberwolves, will be at Stadium Club, located over there at 8101 World Center Drive. So again, be sure to come out to both of those watch parties. The 8th, when the Magic take on the Milwaukee Bucks at Rivals on Wall Street, and March 14th, when the Magic take on the Minnesota Timberwolves, will be at Stadium Club at Caribe Royale, Orlando. Now, Kev, before we get to some of our later conversations with Fawzan, with Coach Jamahl Mosley, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this week's state of the Magic. So far, the Magic are 0-1 on the week with an embarrassing disaster blowout loss on national TV, nonetheless, to the Cleveland Cavaliers on Tuesday. Currently sitting at 29-31, the Magic are 7th in the Eastern Conference. And at the time of this recording, just about 9:30 on Wednesday, the Magic are now 20 games back of Cleveland, 14 games back of Boston, 9.5 games back of New York, 5 games back of Indiana, 4.5 games back of Milwaukee, 4 games back of Detroit, a game up on Atlanta and Miami, and 5 games up on the Chicago Bulls. The Magic are 28th on the year in offensive rating with an offensive rating of 107.1, second in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 108.7, and 18th in the league in net rating with a negative net rating of 1.6. The last 4 games since the All-Star break, the Magic are dropping a little bit in these ratings due to that loss to the Cleveland Cavaliers and the dramatic fashion in which they lost, but they're now 24th in offensive rating with an offensive rating of 105.2, 10th in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 109.0, and 18th in net rating with a negative rating of 3.8. 22 games remaining on the year, Kevin. And taking a look at the injury report, Cole Anthony left early on Tuesday's game, hyperextended that left knee. He is questionable. Jamahl Mosley met with the media after practice on Tuesday, and he's saying that he is not anticipating Cole Anthony missing any games. But obviously he's questionable. That is sort of up in the air right now. And Jalen Suggs is still out with the left quad contusion, and Mo Wagner out for the season with the ACL. Kev, losing yet another body to injury in Cole Anthony, and it still does not seem like Jalen Suggs is going to be back anytime soon.
Yeah, another one bites the dust. Like it's hard, especially because of how well Cole's been playing of late. Like it feels like Cole is finally starting to figure things out. Obviously, we know Cole has had this, right? Like Cole has always, at least in the past, been a good basketball player. He's really struggled the last year and a half or so. But it felt like, we just talked about it on the last episode, like right before the All-Star break, and then, since the All-Star break, started to figure things out. And yeah, another one goes down. It's really, really hard to watch. And especially considering what Cole does bring to this team, another guy that can bring the ball up the floor, be like the lead guard in certain situations, and try to get his own bucket. All things the Magic are desperate for, even with him on the team, with him available. And so to have him go down now, well, I'm just hoping it's not for any serious length of time. As we record this, like you said, Wednesday night, we haven't heard that it's anything serious yet. No like test updates or anything like that. MRIs, I haven't heard anything about that. So hopefully it's nothing serious, but wow. Yeah, that was just hard to believe that another guy goes down.
Really tough news. Definitely not going to help the offense, which all season long, and especially as of late, has been the bigger issue. The defense maybe has not been playing perfect, but in most nights they're playing well enough for you to win if the offense was a little bit better. And obviously we talk about that with Fawzan Amer. So I think this is a really good segue to get to our conversation with Fawzan, where we break down the Cleveland Cavaliers game and that loss on TNT. All right, let's talk about this Cavs game. But as those of you watching on YouTube may notice, we have a special guest who making his six-man show podcast debut, I think.
Yep.
Fawzan Amer, who covers the Orlando Magic for us, the six-man show. You can find his coverage on Twitter. Fawzan, since Elon and X, they got your original account, where can people find you on Twitter these days?
Yeah, you can find me at FAMER_, and then the F and the A are all caps.
Is it 1 underscore or is it 2 underscores?
It's 2? Is it 1
I think
or
it's
is it
2
2? I have
underscores
no
now.
idea.
I think it's 2.
It's 2? All right, I guess
so
it's 2.
Fawzan had taken some clips from the Olympics from Franz Wagner, posted to Twitter, and Elon sent out the black trucks and took out Fawzan's original Twitter account. So,
yeah.
But yeah, if you follow him on Twitter, you obviously know he's some of the best Magic coverage, especially when it comes to the X's and O's and schematics of what's actually happening on the floor. Fawzan, are you nervous right now to make your podcast debut? Well, not your podcast debut, but the six-man show debut.
I'm not going to lie, I was before, but I took a leak before I got on, and I feel a lot better now.
You did what?
I took a leak before I got on, and I feel a lot better now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's just a quick little glimpse into the six-man show all hands group chat that Fawzan is relentlessly sending memes into.
Yeah, that's true.
But let's talk about this Cavs game from Tuesday night. Another game the Magic are on national TV and absolutely got the doors blown off. Now, I was lucky enough to not have to watch this game live. A good high school buddy of mine was in town and had like a mini high school reunion Tuesday night. Everybody went to dinner. It was pretty nice. So Kevin was tweeting, did the post-game video, did the post-game live, was just completely and utterly tortured by this game. Fawzan, I wanted to ask you, what do you think schematically went wrong in this game, but also like what has been going on with the Magic the past 7-8 weeks?
Yeah, I'll start off with the positives because there weren't a lot indicating a 40-point loss. I really liked the usage of Franz on ball and utilizing Paolo Banchero as a screener. It's something that really post All-Star break, or really the season in general, we haven't really seen a lot of the Franz Paolo pick and roll combination or dribble handoff combination between the two forwards. It's something that Jamahl Mosley has exclusively talked about in his post-game and pre-game press conferences, but it's never been indicated onto the floor. And for the first time, Orlando ran it more than five times in a game, and they ran it for a season high 7 times. And I put it on my Twitter that specific play accounted for 10 points, and they scored on 5 of the 7 possessions that they ran it, including one of the possessions was a trip to the charity stripe. So I think just using Paolo Banchero, they need to do a better job in more recently, they've been doing a better job using him as a roller in order to get him downhill in space as a screener by allowing him to just get closer to his spots with less dribbles. And his rolling gravity can be super effective. I mean, we saw it last night against Cleveland, like I indicated, between him and Franz. And even when Franz was off the floor, the first possession Mosley tried was running a post-up for him. And it's something they'll do a lot of when Franz isn't on the floor. And it's post-ups are just not an effective isolation play that generates high volume for this team due to the lack of shooters. And the Cavs defended it really well by fronting him and denying it from the help side. And that ultimately put the Cavs defense in rotation. And a swing pass found Cole Anthony in the corner for a wide open three. And in that following possession, I really like what Jamahl Mosley did. He didn't try forcing the post up again. He just made Paolo screen for Cole Anthony. That high pick and roll action they love to do. And Cole gave Paolo a good shovel pass. And both Cole's defender, Craig Porter Jr. and Jared Allen followed Banchero into the downhill, and Paolo just kicked it right back out to Cole for his second consecutive three. So there was a lot more and a bigger variety of Paolo Banchero screening for multiple different ball handlers, and whenever he did that, it was predominantly high success and high usage, and just creating good shots, whether they were falling or not falling.
So that's the good. I'm curious about the bad, though. Okay, so obviously, Magic blown out in this game, by the way, in case you missed it. Lost by 40 to the Cavs. To maybe the untrained eye, obviously a nasty loss, big blowout. But in some ways, it also, I feel, wasn't an isolated incident, right? Like, I feel like some of these things that we've been seeing over the last few weeks kind of came to a head on Tuesday against Cleveland, the best team in basketball. Is any of that fair, would you say?
Yeah, no, it's fair. And it's the bad starts that get the team, right? And I don't want to excuse, I'll get into Paolo here in a second, but I don't want to excuse him because a million things that worked for him prior to his injury, the early offense, the step-up screens, the pitch plays, the two-man dart actions where he's playing give and go, receiving pocket passes and spraying out to corners, a million things that have worked for him in the past are either not accessible to him due to a clear lack of burst I think we're all witnessing post-injury, or because of the context of the team just being different, he just hasn't been able to find his spot on the floor as easily as he was able to in that Pacers game when he went up for 50. And I apologize to say it in such harsh terms, but he's been bad. I mean, no one, or at least I'm not stating otherwise. I mean, it's just the on-off numbers that everyone wants to focus on with the way tighter lens than it really should be given doesn't really paint the picture of Paolo. I mean, his shot diet is really, really tough. I mean, ISO post-heavy tendencies are what the Magic offense depend on. I mean, nearly each half of the first quarter of each game contains zero off-ball movement by design. I know a lot of Magic fans showcase their frustration for the lack of off-ball movement, but that off-ball movement to start games is by design. What Orlando's offense likes to do is they like to space the floor. They like running that 5-out spread with Banchero on one side of the floor in an almost empty side pick and roll alignment with him posting up. So it'll be KCP giving him a flex screen, and then he'll come and post up. And those looks also take so long to set up. And by the time it sets up, the shot clock's at 12 seconds. And it's just never able to generate good shots because what they don't do is they don't use Franz Wagner as the ball handler. It's, hey, Franz, go stand on the other side of the floor, despite you being our best ball handler on the team, despite not being listed at the point guard position. And we're going to run everything through Paolo. And then when Paolo goes to the bench, you have Franz finally being given the keys to run the offense. And Franz is able to do more because he's just better in space. I mean, despite his size, he can probe around little creases in the paint where he can finish. And I believe to start the season, he was in the 92nd percentile in drive frequency. I'm not too sure where he's at now. So the combination of his ball handling, his size, his ability to wall off bigs and finish with his non-dominant hand, his long strides allow him to weave in and out of traffic. So this season, he's even embraced more physicality, his deceleration. So he's shown a lot of promise as a big playmaker. Ball handling to probe around defenders, giant strides, feel to set up teammates after collapsing the defense. So it just doesn't make sense to me why he's not being given the keys to the offense when Paolo is on the floor, right? I know I said that they ran their Franz Paolo pick and roll 7 times, but they never ran it until the 5-minute mark of the second quarter. That is way too long of a stretch to go without Paolo and a Franz pick and roll. So when Paolo, after post-injury, right, Paolo doesn't have the same touch and flair around the basket due to just him. He's just always been built bigger than Franz, so he's never had to add that to his game. So when defenses deny him and he has to set up further away from the basket, it physically has taken a larger toll on him as opposed to someone like Franz. So to me, watching this team since Paolo's rookie season, I've always, especially this season without Markelle, was give Franz the ball more, especially after his leap when Paolo wasn't on the floor. He had taken a gigantic leap as a playmaker, and since Paolo has come back post-injury, it's just been more Paolo as the main guy and Franz just kind of not doing anything. But we saw better shades of it in the Cleveland game despite being blown out by 40.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the on and off, numbers with Paolo and Franz, with Paolo on versus Paolo off and Franz on versus Franz off. People usually try to use that to discredit Paolo and to say, oh, this is why this guy actually isn't as good as you think, or as maybe some of the counting numbers would say. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's funny that we're recording right now based on the on-off numbers, because I saw this clip floating around while the game was actually happening. Just scrolling through Twitter, and I see this clip floating around. It's Paolo taking a contested fadeaway jumper despite having multiple people open on the court. And a lot of people posted that clip, and they didn't post the clip prior to that, right? There's always more context in the realm of what's going on. Like, why is Paolo taking that shot? Because prior to this season, I've never watched Paolo Banchero in year 1 and year 2 and said, why did you take that shot? Or I've never questioned his IQ. And as soon as Franz left the floor and he went to the bench, Mosley called another post up for Paolo. And again, the Cavs did a really good job fronting him and denying it from the help side. And it came to a point where Paolo didn't even want the ball. So he asked Gary Harris. Gary Harris is on the wing, Paolo's on the post, Wendell's in the middle, and then you got KCP in the corner. And Paolo's saying, don't give me the ball, pitch it back to Wendell Carter Jr. And once that pitch back happened, Paolo completely removed himself from the play because the Cavs had so much attention just being given on his side of the floor. And that play ultimately generated a really good shot. It generated a corner shot, pretty wide open corner three from Gary Harris. And it didn't go in. And the very next play, Jamahl Mosley, again, a lot of people want to criticize Jamahl Mosley for his lack of play calling. But it's not because of a lack of play calling. He's calling plays. When the plays aren't being executed how they're supposed to due to a lack of good roster construction that we can get into later, I guess, it's not for, hey, Mosley never calls plays. He actually called one of their most effective plays this season called Horn's Chin. So you'll have 2 bigs placed on the free throw line extended, so Paolo, Wendell, and then you have Gary in the corner, KCP in the corner. And once Paolo received the ball in that action, he wasn't able to get downhill because the Cavs just weren't allowing. They also have a twin tower bigs in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. So he pointed at Gary Harris to come and screen for him. And as soon as Gary screened for him, Paolo goes right. And at this point, the shot clock's at 13-14. I don't really recall, but we were kind of getting down to the wire here. And he elected to take a tough fadeaway 2 despite being switched to blitz and Gary Harris being completely wide open on a pass he's on the past, Paolo has shown that he's able to make 100 out of 100 times, and he didn't pass it to him. He elected for a tough fadeaway mid-range, and it missed. And in those two possessions that Franz wasn't on the floor, in those very two possessions that Paolo was the only player on the floor without Franz, Cleveland went on a 6-0 run in those same two possessions that I just outlined. And if you want to look at on and off stats, it would tell you that Banchero in that stretch was a -6. And to me, on both possessions, I never felt like his gravity and presence weren't generating good shots for his teammates. Ultimately, on that second possession, he believed that his tough fadeaway jumper was a higher percentage shot than a Gary Harris wide open three, which
Can't blame him.
Which, yeah, you can't really blame him for, but it's what a lot of people get down on him for, and it's a lack of trust. It's a lack of good roster construction around him. It's him playing better lineups than Franz is. So it's a lot that goes into it. But anyone watching that Cleveland game and they're watching Paolo on the floor without Franz, and they see these like couple plays kind of manifest into one another, and your biggest takeaway is Paolo doesn't have good IQ. He's a negative on the floor without Franz, but that's not the case because you're only taking a one-game sample size and you're not really understanding the full context of what's really transpired to why Paolo's not making that pass anymore.
I'm curious, Fawzan, about this Cleveland game. In the post-game live Tuesday night, I said something, and a lot of people agreed, but some people gave a little bit of flack for it. This idea that, yes, the Magic are struggling. Obviously, they've been struggling for the last 2 months. However, Cleveland is like on the total opposite end of that, right? Like Cleveland is a machine right now. So obviously the Magic, they got outplayed by Cleveland. Obviously, that's a Captain Obvious statement. But how much of Tuesday night's performance would you attribute to actually Cleveland just being really, really good right now versus the Magic really, really struggling? What's the balance there in your mind?
Yeah, no, I would attribute it to more as Cleveland just being better than the Orlando Magic from a roster construction standpoint. I also tweeted that I thought Jamahl Mosley coached pretty well in the second, third, and fourth quarter. And I also received a lot of flack from people because a lot of people look at the outcome of a 40-point loss and say, how can that be your takeaway, right? How can your takeaway be that the head coach has done a good job? And the reason for that takeaway was, obviously, we can say that Mosley's had his flaws, right? All that aside from that first quarter, I never thought that Mosley didn't do what he should have. He gave Franz the ball. Franz ran 75% of the offense from the second, third, and fourth quarter. They ran the Paolo Franz pick and roll that we've all been asking them to run a season high 7 times. He's calling Cleveland's offense before they're even setting up in their double drags, in their pitches. He's calling it before they're even doing this, and they're still able to hit shots. The defense was fine for the majority of the night, but I felt like he did a lot of things to alleviate how bad that loss was. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to Jeff Weltman and his roster construction to me, because Cleveland is just 40 points better than you.
So a couple of things that I want to point out for some of our listeners that might not know. Fawzan, number one, is not a Magic fan. He is not the same as Kevin and I. He's coming at this with really an objective lens. And second of all, Fawzan, do we pay you or does anybody pay you to speak positively about the Magic? Let's just get that out there.
No one has ever paid me to cover the Magic. No one has ever paid me to give this team good PR. Any tweet I've ever posted since I've started covering the Magic, or really any tweet I've ever tweeted, period, has been my viewpoint and my viewpoint only. I don't talk in Jonathan's lens. I don't talk in Kevin's lens or Luke's lens. I talk in my lens and my lens only.
Yeah, I say that in jest because people, the three of us are all criticized.
I wish I was getting paid for my tweets. I will say that.
Right, yeah.
Same.
Well, yeah, likewise. But no, Fawzan, you talk about how, like, in the Cavs game, Jamahl Mosley is basically calling out the offense for Cleveland, ahead of what they're doing. Then what would you say is the reason that the Magic just are, like, he's not only doing that for the Cleveland game. Like Jamahl Mosley does that on a regular basis for each of the Magic's opponents. Why do you think the defense is in the state that it is right now?
The defense isn't. I don't even want to necessarily state that the defense is bad, because the defense under Jamahl Mosley, like when we're evaluating head coaches, when I evaluate head coaches, I always evaluate you with what did you come here as? Did you come here as an offensive mantra or a defensive mantra, right? Because you can't come in here as an offensive mantra and then have a bad offense, or you can't come in here as a defensive mantra and have a bad defense, right? So kind of scaling back. In Mosley's first year as a head coach, the Magic ranked 19th in defensive rating. And then in the second year, they rose up to 18th. And then following the team's 5-20 start after in Paolo's rookie year, they finished the season 6th. And then the previous year where they made the playoff, they were 3rd. And this season, like as crazy as it sounds, and as much as we want to diminish Jamahl Mosley, the defense is still the second. From a defensive rating, at least it's second. You're the second best defense on paper in the league. So I don't really want to attribute that Cleveland loss to bad defense. It's just DeAndre Hunter. I would attribute it to more, like I said, roster construction. I think we have to understand that Gary Harris and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope aren't shot creators, either for themselves or others. It's not just shooting, right? Lack of shot diversity stifles this offense, and every defense knows what's coming and how to stop it easily. As opposed to Cleveland, where they have multiple shot creators, and we got a real display of that last night. You have DeAndre Hunter creating his own shot. You got Ty Jerome creating his own shot. They had Karis LeVert prior to the trade deadline where they shipped him off creating his own shot. You have multiple other secondary creators creating their own shot. I think it's also just to understand Donovan Mitchell only played 25 minutes in this game, and you got blown out by 40. It's not just our defense was just bad. If it's not Paolo or if it's not Franz, there's no one else on this team who is giving this team shot creation on a consistent basis. Yeah, you have Cole on nights, you have Anthony Black on nights, but other than Paolo and Franz, who's giving this team shot creation? I'm not talking about shooting, I'm not talking about spacing, I'm talking about shot creation, can create their own shot off the dribble. And I think since the day Paolo was drafted, those needs became clear. After his rookie season, they didn't just become clear, they were glaring must-adds. And after his second year, it became negligent roster construction. And then Paolo even went as far as saying, I want you to surround me with someone who can create off the dribble and set the table up, I believe is the quote that he used with Ben Golliver on Washington Post. And it's just been neglected time and time again.
Last thing I have, Fawzan, is for you at least, the absence of Jalen Suggs obviously felt pretty severely during this stretch. They showed time and time again on TNT, the broadcast, their record with him and without him. I think part of this team struggles, I think obviously can be attributed to his absence, but how much of that would you align with, right? Like how much do you think Jalen adds to this team on either end of the floor? And do you really think his return could potentially be a lift for this team as the regular season winds down?
Yeah, no, I underestimated how important Jalen Suggs was to this team. And I think a lot of other people kind of followed that same fruition, not named Jonathan Osborne.
That's right, baby.
But no, he adds a lot. And it's not just forget defensive scheme, forget offensive scheme for a second. Just the energy that he brings from a per possession standpoint is something that you can't buy, right? It's not something that you can put a number on. It's not something that you can put on a spreadsheet or that you can put on and off numbers. The energy that he just plays. And I know that a lot of people, including me, have kind of came down on him for playing with such a reckless endangerment on a per possession basis. But sometimes that stuff is needed sometimes. I would have killed to see that in the Cleveland game. Just diving on the floor, grabbing loose balls, getting in people's legs for the ball, just doing all these things and making him a defensive pest, making him a defensive nuance. And it's really why the league awarded him that all defensive second team last season. Now, with his energy to the side, obviously he's able to pick up your team's best primary ball handler. And I think that's another thing that we have to add. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was brought in here to kind of alleviate the pressure that Jalen Suggs faces from guarding and being completely reckless every single possession. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has not been guarding the team's best offensive player post All-Star break. It was Franz Wagner guarding Trae Young. It was Franz Wagner guarding John Morant. It was Franz Wagner guarding Donovan Mitchell last night. It hasn't been Kentavious Caldwell-Pope picking up the opposing team's best primary ball handler and best shot creator. So you've really went from Jalen Suggs picking up the team's best player to Franz Wagner picking up the team's best player. And I don't want to discredit Franz Wagner at all. He's a great defender for someone his size, and he moves completely immobile. And I did a breakdown on it as well on my Twitter. Another shameless plug for you guys out there. But yeah, like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope isn't adding anything, right? He isn't adding shot creation. He isn't hitting his shots. He isn't hitting his wide open shots. When he's screening, his defenders switch to blitz. He's not defending the best player on the floor. So you've kind of went from the energy that Jalen Suggs brings from a defensive possession to the offensive spacing that he brings, right? A lot of the offense that they were running when it was stagnant and it was Paolo on one side and everybody else on the other side into that post-up, it was Jalen Suggs and Paolo screening for each other. And Jalen Suggs, I don't recall his catch and shoot numbers prior to his injury, but he was shooting pretty well from downtown, especially on those empty side pick and rolls he ran with Paolo Banchero. So you're missing a lot. You're missing the empty side pick and roll. You're missing him picking up the best guarding the best defensive player. You're missing his energy on a per possession basis, and you're just missing a lot of the swagger that he just brings with him, hyping up the Kia crowd. That when Orlando went on that run to close out the first half, I believe it was an 11-0 run. There was no one hyping up the Kia crowd, getting them energized, getting the juices flowing. So there's a lot of like extracurricular activities that Jalen Suggs provides that you can't really put on paper that we haven't seen since his injury.
Fawzan, Magic have, I think it's 21 games left or 22 games left in the season now. What do you think are some things that the Magic can change, whether that be, schematically, health? That just seems kind of like a long shot with the, I guess, lack of updates that we're getting on Jalen Suggs. But what do you think are some of the things that they may be able to do to help turn some of this around going down the stretch? Yeah.
Number one, involve Franz more offensively. The first play of the game cannot be everyone stands, waits for the Paolo post-up to happen, and then we're running back in transition. That can't start off the game with your best set. That's not a post-up. That doesn't completely delineate Paolo Banchero's energy from the jump. That way he can also be involved defensively, because all these post-ups are taking a shot to his body, and he's not getting back in transition at times. He's not defending how he should be at times. So, yeah, let's involve Franz a lot more. I want the ball in Franz's hand. I want him calling the sets. I want him calling the shots. A lot more Franz, Paolo pick and rolls. Let's not wait until midway through the second quarter to do that. I would also stop pairing Gary Harris and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope with Paolo Banchero in a non-Franz Wagner lineup. It's not working. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work the more you do it. We're not going to wake up tomorrow and it's suddenly going to work. I'd like it to be players who can put the ball on the floor. So, yeah, those are the two things I would start from an offensive standpoint. To the people who want to complain about the lack of offensive movement, the lack of off-ball movement, I shared those testaments. I still share those testaments, but we also have to understand that teams are packing the paint, and and this is another thing Jamahl Mosley has done that hasn't really garnered a lot of attention. Instead of making those 45-degree cuts to the basket, since you can't really go to the basket anymore, there's like you're just going towards people at that point. What they started doing is a Danny Green cut. You'll have Anthony Black or Tristan Da Silva or just any of Anthony Black, Christian De Silva, Jonathan Isaac, or Cole Anthony making that baseline from baseline to baseline cut. So those are the cuts they're doing right now. I want to see more of that. But yeah, other than that, there's really nothing more else that you can do from a roster construction standpoint. Again, I'm just going to keep going back to that. I don't believe this team is built the way it should to surround Paolo, Banchero, and Franz Wagner to stifle really what they need to.
Well, it doesn't take
on.
as smart as somebody as you to figure that out. I think. But Fawzan, thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts about this Cleveland game and breaking it down from a little bit more of an X and O standpoint. And once again, just let listeners know who may or may not be on Twitter. They may not follow you already. Let them know where they can find you and find your work in these breakdowns on Twitter.
Yeah, if you guys have ESPN Plus, you can find me on the bench on UNT men's basketball games when we play.
Only at home, right?
No, home and away. I just won't be
away now. Okay, cool. Yeah, look at you traveling.
Yeah, I just won't be at this FAU game in Boca Raton tomorrow. But yeah, you can find me there. You can find me on Twitter at FAMER 2_. And you can find my articles at sixmanshow.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Fawzan.
We interrupt our 500th episode to remind you about our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken. Some of the best food in Central Florida, and they're die-hard Magic fans. They're bringing jams, culture, and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park. They're located at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13, which is in Hannibal Square there in Winter Park. And they make amazing hot chicken, and not just hot chicken, which you can definitely get, but you can just get plain chicken, not spicy at all. That's what I get a lot of the time. All of it's really good, whether you're getting the sando or the box or the pickles or the comeback sauce, like all their stuff they make in-house, and it's so good. Again, you can find them there in Winter Park. You can also find them at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media, and check out jamhotchickenfl.com to access their menu, online ordering, and all things Jam Hot. Again, we're big fans of Jam Hot because they're big fans of the Magic. And so when you visit Jam Hot Chicken there in Winter Park, just let them know that the Six Man Show sent you.
This episode is also brought to you by Drew Gooden, Danimal Avantopoulos, Chansu, and Ray Pastrana. Who are these folks? These are some of our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons. They went over to patreon.com/the Six Man Show, and they joined either our Hall of Fame or elite tier level. We can't do anything that we do. We certainly can't do 500 episodes without the support of our patrons. And we also shout out special brand new patrons whenever we have a new patron. So this episode, shout out to Seth Berry, who joined the Patreon this week. Really, really appreciate you joining the family here. Like I said, we can't do anything that we do without the support of our patrons. So if you like the show, you want to join us in this mission of growing this Orlando Magic fan base, again, head on over to patreon.com/the Six Man Show, where for as little as $2 a month, you can help us do what we do here. So we give a special shout out to some of our patrons each and every week just to show our appreciation. And again, just thank you all for the love and the support. 500 episodes, really, really crazy to think about. And yeah, thanks so much to our patrons. And now let's get back to the show. Appreciate Fawzan for stopping by. Always good to talk with him. Good for him to make his Six-Man Show debut. And for those of you who follow him on Twitter, you get to hear the dude's voice because you might never have heard that before. So, but no, it's refreshing to talk to somebody more about like the X's and O's and some of the nuances that, maybe some of the more casual observers. Fawzan lives, breathes, sleeps basketball. He's literally like a assistant video coordinator for, a Division I basketball team. So it's quite literally all he does. Kevin and I, we do our best, but yeah, Fawzan, just super smart dude. And yeah, definitely appreciate his insight.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. A very different perspective. My brain doesn't work that way. Like I love the the atmosphere, the energy, the aura of the NBA. Like I love my sports teams. Like I'm fully invested, obviously, in the Orlando Magic, but my brain just doesn't operate that way as guys like Fawzan or other people like that. And so it is very interesting and helpful to hear from guys that, have that whole X's and O's side of their brain that can help explain some of the things that we see. Like obviously I can see the offense isn't good, and for someone like Fawzan to come along and explain maybe why that's happening, I think is always helpful. I also think it's helpful and interesting to hear someone with, who comes from a coaching perspective talk about the Magic's coaching situation, right? Like there's a lot of people that get on the internet and on Twitter and stuff, and they're all about fire this person's terrible, what blah 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 blah. But I think a lot of people who are in that coaching realm don't always see the issues that the Magic have as purely coaching issues, right? I think there are a lot of other things at play here. And so, yeah, I think it's always interesting to hear from that kind of perspective of kind of maybe what's going right and things that might be going wrong when it comes to coaching perspective for the Magic.
And someone who is not a Magic fan, like is not looking at this through like electric blue tinted glasses, right? Like he is coming at this from an objective perspective. And we've made jokes with him over the years of like, dude, like you're a Magic fan at this point. Like he's from Chicago. He is a Bulls fan. But we're like, dude, you watch the Magic more than you watch the Bulls. Like and he gets very offended and tells you like, don't ever speak to me like that again, and that kind of stuff when you say that. But appreciate him taking the time. And as we talk about looking at things from a coaching perspective, as we continue to celebrate our 500th episode, I think this is a pretty good opportunity for us to segue into our conversation with none other than Orlando Magic head coach Jamahl Mosley. All right, Magic fans, we are continuing celebrating our 500th episode, and we have a very special guest. Kevin and I have been looking forward to this and couldn't really sleep last night. We were so excited for our guest here, but we are joined by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, head coach of the Orlando Magic, Coach Jamahl Mosley. First of all, how are you doing? And just thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. I'm glad I can be on with you guys. It's exciting for me as well. So, and congratulations to you all as well for 500. That's really awesome.
Very kind, Coach. Really, really appreciate that. And we're going to talk about this, but we just appreciate the job that you've been doing here over the last 4 years. And wanted to ask you a little bit, before you got the job here in Orlando and moved your family here, what was your perception of the organization and the city of Orlando? Mm-hmm. And just talk a little bit about maybe how that has evolved and changed, over your 4 seasons here.
Before I took the job here, coming here with different teams, obviously it was Dallas for the last 7. So you'd come to the city, you knew what the fan base was, you understand the history of the organization. What they had done in the past. And so that was what would kind of resonate with me, knowing what was going on here. You knew that there was the deep rooted fan support, people that were diehard. Obviously the team wasn't, winning at a high clip for a long time, for a while. So, you would come in thinking, you could get away with a W. And I think as you get the job, you now look and remember what that felt like. So you wanted to change that atmosphere a bit of like what people had the perception of it. You're not walking in here with an easy win, and you're going to have to battle every time you touch the floor when you come to play the Magic.
I'm curious, Coach. This is season 4 for you as head coach here. How would you say you've changed over the 4 seasons? Maybe how you changed how you've led people in 2021 versus how you lead them now, how you coached in 2021 versus how you coach now. How would you say you've kind of changed or evolved over these 4 years?
Well, it'll always be servant leadership. It's players first, people first, whatever we can do to help these guys reach their goals as individuals, but also as a team. I think that I don't know that will ever change with me. Now, the way in which we communicate has been different because there's been stages of you've been growing and developing and helping guys understand and see the game, and you're never going to get away from that. But I think now, and it's what these guys have asked for, to be coached at a higher standard and a higher level. So I think that's what's coming out more in this last year and this year as well. Like you can coach at a higher standard to what we know we expect from ourselves, and where we can go moving forward. And that's just a standard that needs to be set for our duration here.
I'm curious about this season in particular, Coach. This, even for us Magic fans, we're exhausted. This has been such a roller coaster ride. I can't imagine how you are and how you've been, all of the ups and downs, the adversity, the injuries, the sicknesses, the amazing wins, the comebacks when you're shorthanded and all that kind of stuff. Again, total roller coaster ride. How has it been for you as head coach of this organization? And have you ever seen anything quite like it when it comes to an NBA season?
Yeah, that's unbelievable that you asked that, because I was just talking to my wife earlier this morning, just like being how you can get exhausted because you feel like you've played 4 or 5 seasons in one season. You start off, you're going to get rolling. You've got your healthy bodies. Guys feel good. They're confident. There's flow. There's chemistry. You can feel that. And then guys go down. And you have Paolo goes down, J.I. goes down, and then Franz goes down, then Mo goes down, then Jalen goes down, and then we have Gary out for a while. So you're looking at all these pieces all within the realm of how do you just keep it going and get these guys understanding exactly what our Magic brand of basketball is. And we did that for some time, but it's just trying to plug in the right pieces, keep the energy right, keep our spirit right, and knowing exactly how we have to play. So I feel like you guys, I really do. I know the fans have felt it. They're like, who's on the court tonight? Who's not on the court tonight? Who's going to be playing? How many minutes can they play? What does this look like? I feel those same things. And so, it's just making sure these guys are trying to bring their best every night. That's what it's basically turned into, is as much as possible for me and our staff.
And as we talk about this season and what's been such a staple for you and your staff and your rosters the last few years is that we're going to live and die by the way that the defense performs. It's, such a calling card of the Magic right now. And right now, the team is still 3rd in overall defensive rating for the season. But the last several weeks, we've seen that slip a little bit, being towards like the middle of the league. Mm-hmm. What do you think you would contribute that to the most? Obviously, for the bigger part of that stretch, you've been without Jalen. Yeah. Is it not having Jalen, not having that energy? Is it not having Jalen calls for like a different schematic approach defensively? What would you say is the biggest reason for maybe not being at that same level the last couple of weeks?
I think it's a combination of a few things. And I think those last few weeks, you say you were without Goga, you were without J.I. for some time. And those are, your major rim protectors for those moments. And so you're playing a little bit of small. You're playing without, Wendell was out for some time. Jalen is a major factor in that. You can't get away from that at all. And I think because he is the head of our defense at times, he sets the tone with energy, intensity, getting into the basketball. But now that's just being tasked by other guys to be able to do. And so when you miss that piece, along with, Goga being out and the rim protection of J.I. at times, you're now giving up rim and you're also allowing, guys to get by at times. So being able to find the different balances of how you have to go schematically to cover, what changes the way in which we've played a little bit when it comes to that.
As we talked sort of before we started recording, we're coming off of last night's game, the loss at home to Memphis, and felt like at one point you might have had the game in hand, maybe not exactly in hand. There were a few minutes left in that game where you had a decent lead, and that's what we would call probably a frustrating loss. I'm sure you and the team were all frustrated after that loss, and the last couple of weeks, it seems like maybe there is a level of frustration, and the team not, winning as much as you were earlier in the season. But I guess what I wanted to ask you is, as like the head coach, where, even if you do the very best job that you can, like preparing yourself, your staff, the players, there's so much that's just out of your control in terms of if a guy might miss a defensive rotation or you don't get the timeout that you wanted or shots aren't falling. As the head coach, how do you sort of like handle that aspect, that there is so much that's out of your control?
Well, that's a great question. And I think we have to look at it as we're trying to put these guys in the best position to be successful. And at the end of the day, that's all we can do. You talk about the preparation of pregame, postgame, film studies, sessions with the coaches, everything with the game plan, them watching their film. You're doing everything to prepare them to be at their best. And so when that ball goes up, a lot of it in that first 4 minutes, the game plan's intact, and then it's just feel and reads from there. And we've gone over every scenario in that you can in all of these games. So as a coach, you have to let go as much as you can, because if I'm screaming and yelling all the time on the sideline for what we need to do, then they can't read and react and play off of their instincts, which makes them some of the best basketball players in the world. So you want to allow them that to be who they are, especially with this young group, because they have to learn how to go through these things on their own and not always have to look to the sideline to figure out exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's good. I can't imagine having all those different moving pieces and parts, have to kind of lay your hands off at some point and go, yeah, it's kind of up to them. I'm curious about this, Coach. The casual NBA fan might not have a full understanding of this. Like, what is the relationship between like a front office and a coaching staff, right? In the Magic's, situation, right? You have your team, your coaching staff, right? Jeff Weltman has his team, and then how do those teams work together when it comes to things like roster construction or rotations we talked about, like when there's these injuries and minute restrictions and all that kind of stuff? How would you say like the front office works with the coaching staff to work together on this?
Well, we just talked about it as a staff the other day, our coaching staff, and we just constantly say we as an organization, because I think it has to be we that are all aligned in what it is we're doing and how we're communicating with one another. And Jeff and I talk a ton. The relationship is fantastic. Just being able to communicate what's needed, what's wanted. And like you said, with all these moving parts, there has to be constant communication about what direction you're heading in, what can you see as a group. And like you said, and like the fans see, there's not a consistent flow right now because of the injuries, because of guys coming back in. But the relationship we have is just constant communication. And that's from analytics to, Jeff to his team. We constantly talk about exactly what can be done, what should be done, and then being able to see this team as a whole as we move forward.
Coach, you seem to have such a great connection with not only your players, but players around the league on other teams. Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think you're able to form those connections and build trust with so many players around the league that you're coaching now and that you've coached in the past, or maybe that you haven't coached at all?
I think it goes through the summers. You meet guys, the word of mouth travels of, players you've worked with, what you've done. But again, I think it always just goes back to if I wasn't coaching, it's always just about the human being. And so when I see the guys off the court, in the summer times, it's just about friendly banter back and forth, but getting to know them as human beings, not just the basketball players. And I think that for me, that's the most important thing with our guys, with the league, because this game has given us all so much. And that's what I try to, impart on our guys, that this is what this game's given you. So you have to treat it a certain way, and you have to treat people in this game a certain way, because, the ball's going to stop bouncing at some point. And when you get to see guys and their careers and their journeys, you celebrate them even when they're not playing for you.
Coach, like we talked about earlier, this is your fourth season here. I'm curious if you have like a favorite moment, whether it's a certain game, a certain moment, maybe it's something not even on the court, something off the court that we don't know about. Is there a certain moment that stands out to you over your 4 seasons now in Orlando that's your favorite?
Oh my goodness, that's a good one. I think I would say Game 6 playoff win. I think it's funny because I'm getting chills right now thinking of the atmosphere and the energy in the building, and it was a must-win game. And I think you felt our fans. Like and I told you guys this before, I don't know that our fans really understand how amazing they are to us, and how, like, I get chills thinking about it, because the energy in that building when we are going and that support behind it, that was probably one of my favorite memories from being here for the 4 years, of just that energy, that atmosphere, and just seeing what that building was like, and how it propelled us to get to a Game 7.
Coach, obviously these players, like, they amp themselves up and they get ready for games. I have seen you a time or two take a little whiff of the smelling salts as a game is getting ready to tip off. What does that do for you? And, like, you seem to approach these games with the same level of competitiveness as these players. Is that fair to assume?
Yeah, that is fair to assume. And I have to tone myself down a little bit. Like last night, it got a little amped up. I got a tech because I do feel the energy of our group. I feel the energy of the crowd. And you want to battle. And to your question about before about how much you can control. Well, I know I can't control a lot of things out there, but I can be involved and help these guys know how vested I am with them in what we're trying to do. So the salts is just a little bit of focus. And it's only been twice, I think, in probably a couple of years, but it just happened to get caught on camera.
That's hilarious. We've got a few rapid fire questions for you. Okay. Some really, really quick hitters here. I think some Magic fans will get a kick out of some of these. Okay.
All right.
Here we go. First off, do you have a favorite Magic jersey from the 4 seasons? Like, is there one that you've seen the players wear that you're like, that one's sharp, I wish I wore that, or maybe you have some in your own closet. Are there any ones that you like?
I'm liking the Kingdom on the Rise. I like that one. I really do.
Okay.
And we have a pretty good record with those on.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
Another thing that I've noticed, Coach, is every game, at least the home games, you have a bottle like sitting on the scorer's table filled with some kind of like yellow beverage. I need to know what's in the bottle.
Hydration packet.
Just like electrolytes.
Electrolytes. That's it.
Yeah. And is it lemon flavored?
It is lemon flavored. You're absolutely right.
I knew it.
That's hilarious. What's your favorite NBA arena? Not Kia Center, of course. Do you have any other favorite arenas that you like to visit over the course of the season?
The Garden. Knicks. That's one of the favorite places to be.
Classic.
Coach, why have we not seen a Magic player bust out the Jamahl Mosley double collar pop celebration after a dunk yet?
It's so funny because they all laugh and joke, like say they're going to do it, and no one ever does it. Like Wagner was going to do it, said he was going to do it. Then Wendell said he's going to do it. I have no idea. The next person I think is probably going to do it at some point would be Jalen. He's probably the one that will probably get that one off.
Yeah, we'll have to put that bug in his ear again. Remind him about it. We got to see it. I like this one. Okay. What do you enjoy more? A win at home over in front of a raucous crowd, or a win on the road that silences a hostile crowd?
I like winning at home.
Yeah.
I like winning at home. I love winning in front of our fans. There's nothing better.
Coach, what is your favorite Central Florida restaurant? Like Friday night, you and the missus are going out for a good meal. What is it?
Prado.
Prado. Yeah.
That's our date night. That's our kid night. We think we've spent Christmas Eve there.
And what is your like go-to order at Prado?
I am doing it's changed. The gnocchi is one of my favorites, and there's the plain cheese pizza.
Oh, okay, there you go.
With the Caesar salad.
Love that. Last one of the rapid fires. What do you do on an off day during the off season? I know there's not off days during the season, really, but like off season, you got time to yourself, to the family. What does Jamahl Mosley do for fun during the off season?
Well, hanging with the kids, that's first and foremost. And then if we can take a walk, we can just spend some time together as a family. But I'm probably working out. I'm sauna, cold plunge, hit the mitts a little bit, and then just get a great workout. That's it. That's a great day for me. And then be able to relax with the family afterwards and get a good meal and a glass of wine.
Love that.
Awesome. Coach Jamahl, before we let you go, again, we just want to thank you for your time, joining our 500th episode here and helping make it a little bit more special. But we just want to speak for all Magic fans. When we go back to where this team was and this franchise was 4 years ago before you got here and a lot of guys on the roster got here, just all of us, this is even though, there have been ups and downs this season, the fact that like we're frustrated because we know what this team is capable of when they're healthy and playing well. We're just so appreciative of the culture that you have helped put in place and just how far you've taken this team in the years that you've been here. And we just look forward to what is next for this team the rest of the season and in years moving forward. We're just really, really appreciative.
Well, I cannot thank you all enough for what you do, what you all do, and for your 500th episode. And to the fans, I can't stress it enough, like how grateful we are of the support, the care factor, the enthusiasm, the energy that everyone brings out every single night. And it means the world to me, to us, to our organization.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate you joining the show. And yeah, good luck the rest of the season.
I appreciate it. Let me know when I can come on again. You guys are awesome, man.
We definitely will, Coach. Thank you so much.
All right. Appreciate it.
Jamahl Mosley. Appreciate him taking the time. Super awesome opportunity getting to sit down and talk with him. And again, that was the night after, or the morning after, rather, the loss to the Memphis Grizzlies last week. So for a guy who probably wasn't super thrilled to do a Magic podcast the night after that loss, him taking the time and just being very generous with his time and spending a few minutes with us and just getting to know Jamahl Mosley a little bit more, even though, like, admittedly, the guy hates talking about himself. But I hope that fans came away with that, like, just respecting the person, number one, like, just genuinely such a great dude. He's a heck of a basketball coach, obviously, but give you the opportunity to get to know him more. We try to do what we thought was sort of like our due diligence to fans and ask. I don't know that I would, again, call them like difficult questions, but like ask questions that every Magic fan is kind of wondering, and also have a little bit of fun with that, Kev.
Yeah, it was awesome to get to talk with him. One of the things that I'm glad we were able to do at the end was just show our appreciation to him for the time that he's been in Orlando. Because for me, it's not even about necessarily the X's and O's with him. It's about just the culture. Like he, if you ask me, single-handedly almost has changed the culture in and around this team. Like you think 4 years ago, prior to his arrival, I don't want to say guys didn't really care about the jersey they were wearing or the city they were representing, but in some ways it felt like that, right? He comes on board, we draft Jalen and Franz, and then ever since then it's just totally changed. He has totally changed the culture of this team, right? Like I know it's hard to look past some of the struggles we have right now, and it's hard to remember sometimes some of the amazing moments that have kind of encapsulated this idea. But like the guys that are wearing Orlando Magic jerseys right now are representing this city with passion and with pride and with a desire to just see this team flourish and to see this community flourish. And you can count on one hand, I feel like, the number of times in Magic history where that's really truly been the case. And so I am super grateful for Jamahl Mosley for him doing that. Again, just changing the game, changing how the actual players on this team view the city and view the fans, and vice versa. I mean, think about the question that we asked him about his favorite moment and him talking about Game 6 and like hearing him describe what that moment meant to him and meant to the players. Like that's everything you could hope for when it comes to like culture, right? Like culture of a team, culture of a franchise, culture of a fan base. And so I'm really grateful for him. Glad we were able to get to have him on the show and get to talk about those things. And yeah, he's also just a chill guy, super down to earth, and it was great to talk with him. And yeah, super, super glad we got to do that.
And like a byproduct of everything that he's done since he's been here. And we can talk about, like, we know the guys who like really love playing here, whether that be Jalen Suggs, Mo Wagner, Cole Anthony, Goga Batadze, like some of those guys that, have like fully expressed that. But also like a guy like Kentavious Caldwell Pope, like who we can look at that signing in hindsight and talk about whether or not that has worked. But at that point, like that was a sought after free agent, right? And was widely regarded as a major signing for the Magic. And again, we can talk about the way that has worked out or not, but like people looking at what is going on in Orlando from the outside and like saying, you know what, that's something that I want to be a part of. And that has a lot to do with Jamahl Mosley and the way that this team defends and never gives up and, competes on a night in and night out basis. To your point, Kevin, none of that happens, in my opinion, with Jamahl Mosley. And, no coach is perfect, right? Like every coach has, their, setbacks or drawbacks or whatever you want to call them. No one is without that. And you and I we've pointed those out from time to time. But I just think it's important, like by and large, to realize what he's been able to do in his 4 years here. And, we hope that came across. Kev, something that you and I didn't really take the opportunity to do when we were talking about that Cavs game is just kind of, and you and I haven't talked a ton about the way that we're feeling after the Cavs game. So I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of just do like a temperature check here and see where you are mentally, emotionally, where you think this team is right now, where we think they're headed, the outlook for the rest of the season. Like, how are you doing right now in your Magic fandom?
this is controversial, and yeah, this is controversial.
Why would you say something so controversial and brave?
Yeah, like who in the Magic fandom universe legitimately deep down thought the Magic were going to win that game on Tuesday? I know I picked them on the episode. But it was more so like, how fun would that be? Let's go 3-0, right? But like legitimately, who in Magic fandom would have bet legitimate money that the Magic were going to win that game on Tuesday? Nobody. So Tuesday's game against Cleveland hasn't changed anything for me. Which I know is controversial.
What if I would have told you that they lose by 40?
Look, the Knicks lost to him by 37 on Friday. The Cavs are capable of doing this against anyone, and they've done it all season. They have 10 losses.
Why are you screaming at me?
They have 10 losses. Because this is the part I just don't understand. I don't understand why we're freaking out. I understand the big picture. The big picture is we were even with the Cavs last year, and they have far surpassed us this year. I understand the big picture of that, but on the micro side of things, like going into Tuesday's game, I expected a loss. We lost. Let's move on. That's where I am. Okay. Like, again, not everybody agrees with that, and I understand that, but that's how I feel. So now in the bigger picture of the season, it is obviously we're not where we wanted to be. I'm disappointed. I'm upset by that. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think injuries is a big part of it. I think guys being incapable of shooting the basketball is the other big part of it. And so that sucks. And then standings wise, like I am almost to the point where I'm ready to wave goodbye to the 6th seed or higher. Like I'm almost at the point where we're fully embracing the play-in. I think the rest of this homestand will make or break that. We've got these 4 games: Golden State, Chicago, Golden State, Toronto, Chicago. I think if you don't go 3-1, we're totally screwed. But maybe even 4. You might have to go 4-0 in this stretch to convince me that we might have a chance of getting out of the play-in. Because right now Detroit is rolling. They're like they whooped the Celtics tonight by 20. I think we're back 4.5 games now. Yeah, 4.5 games behind Detroit for the 6th seed. 4.5 games with 22 to play. That feels really daunting. Which again is why I feel like the rest of this homestand is going to make or break that. And so yeah, this time next week, we might just be resigning ourselves to the play-in, and that is what it is. But yeah, Tuesday didn't change anything for me. It didn't change anything for me, and for that reason, I don't fully understand the reactions that we've been hearing since then. But again, I know I'm on an island probably by myself when it comes to that.
I don't think you're by yourself, but I also do think it's super easy to like scroll Twitter for 5 seconds and see like just crazy, overreactions to anything that happens. Like we're like not just this game, but like any loss that we have. Like, the Memphis game happens and people are saying, this person should be fired. That like we see that kind of stuff regardless. We've been talking about this 11 game stretch starting with February 8th. Like when we got back from the West Coast road trip, like these 11 games are the season. And we both kind of agreed, like you have to go 8-3 or 7-4 in that stretch. And so far, the Magic are 4-3 in that stretch. Seven games through. So you do have to go undefeated in this stretch here. So yeah, you would end up going, or wait, no, we are 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, right now we're 4-3 with 4 games remaining here.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you go undefeated, you end up going 8-3.
Right.
And if you lose one of those games, and you're still able to go 7-4, which I think we would all kind of take. So the Golden State game just by itself, and this is one of the difficult things when you're talking about an 82 game season, because it's really easy to get wrapped up into the narratives and like what's been going on, and you forget that like all of the games still count the same, right? Like the 105-104 loss to Memphis counts the same as the 40-point loss to Cleveland. They feel very different, but they still only count as one loss. For me, the issue that I'm having is just getting the absolute doors blown off, and not just oh, it's guys making shots, but we're hearing it from the head coach. We're hearing it from your two best players in Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, that there are like deep-rooted like communication issues where everybody's not on the same page. And that's going back to the loss to Memphis. Like, those were sentiments that were shared after that game. And Paolo Banchero coming out and say, like, guys are not on the same page. We're not communicating. Guys are not locked in. Like, and he's saying that, like, they were asking him, well, you guys have a practice, on Tuesday or on Wednesday, excuse me. What do you think can be accomplished? And Paolo Banchero literally said, he's like, I don't think a practice is going to change anything. Like, guys just have to lock in and like basically like play the way that they're supposed to play. So had the last few weeks of this, we've all admitted that the vibes have been off. Had that not been the case the last few weeks and you have this blowout, then it's like, okay, it's just kind of one game. But for me, it's just like, it is such a representation of what has been wrong with this team the last several weeks. And yet again, another nationally televised game where you're showcased to show like, hey, like, we haven't been playing well, but we're still a good team, all of that. I think we are all, realistic fans were pretty resigned to the fact weeks ago that Cleveland is just head and shoulders better than the Orlando Magic are at this point. But still, getting destroyed by 40 points in a game that, by the way, Wendell Carter before the game said this was a must-win. When Wendell says something is a must-win, it feels like at this point it's like a guaranteed loss, because the last several games that he has pointed to and saying this is a must-win, we have to come out and win this game, blah, blah. The Magic are not winning those games. So I do understand where people are like resigned to the fact that like, hey, this is a play-in team. And that's kind of where I'm at. Like, we are not a playoff team at this point. There is something like critically wrong with, I don't know exactly what it is. Is it the vibes in the locker room? Are the friendship like stage, like the honeymoon phase with this team? Are we kind of beyond that? Like, are there locker room issues? We know there are roster construction issues. But Paolo Banchero was asked after the Cleveland game of like, what's kind of the vibe amongst your teammates? And he said, well, you'd have to ask them. And that might be nothing, but it also could be something, right? Like, he's speaking to the fact that like everybody should be ticked off after this game. And his body language, not only after this game, but what we've seen recently. And again, the wording of like, we're not all on the same page, we're not communicating. It doesn't feel like everybody is pulling in the same direction like they once were. And we may never know what the real issue is. Is there some kind of chemistry issue? Because like, I've had relationships before where everything is great, and then one little miscommunication or something happens, and then all of a sudden you're not really on the same page and you're not seeing eye to eye moving forward. And eventually, for one reason or another, you're not the biggest fan of whoever that might be. I think we would all like to think that the culture of this team is stronger than that. Steve Clifford used to say, like, your culture is as good as your record. Like, your chemistry is as good as your record. Like, if you're winning, guys are, getting along and they're going to dinner together and they're having a ton of fun. When you're losing, all of that stuff kind of goes out of the window. And I think we are seeing a little bit of that. So I don't think my mind has totally changed, more so than it is like confirmed what I've kind of been feeling for the last couple of weeks. And yeah, when we talk about Detroit's on an 8-game win streak now, they just blew the doors off of the Boston Celtics, and they're creating even more space between us and the standings in terms of the 6th seed. I have a really tough time seeing this team figuring everything out and being able to win 6 more games than the Detroit Pistons over the last quarter of the season now. So it just kind of feels like this is where we are now. This is a play-in team. That's not something that we should all just like, it's not an excuse for anything. It's not saying, oh, well, this is a play-in team, because we were all talking about the 2 seed, the 3 seed at the beginning of the season, the 4 seed. We should have home court advantage. That should be the goal for the season. But like, more so just kind of shifting the expectations is like, hey, when we have bad losses like this, it's not that, we're this incredible team that shouldn't be losing games. We are this team right now. We are a team who 60 games through the season is 2 games under 500. And I think we all just need to accept that. And you're shaking your head. You disagree.
I don't fully disagree. What we see right now is undoubtedly a play-in team and undoubtedly 2 games under 500. But we have seen this team with their 3 best players 6 times.
I don't feel like we're going to see this team with their 3 best players.
That might be possible. But I can't just ignore that. Right? Like, this team was dealt a crappy hand for this season. A horrible hand for this season. And so while I 100% agree, like, we're in a terrible spot and it sucks, I can't just ignore that. I can't, like, I don't know. I don't
want you to ignore it, but I do have a question. Do you think that this team is built to win if they don't knock down shots? If they're incapable of knocking down shots and shoot the way that they have been shooting all year, do you think they can, like, actually make a run without, at this point, would be a miraculous change?
No, but I also don't think they'd be 29-31. Like, there's a middle ground there. Like, I feel like if this team was fully healthy, even without Mo Wagner, this team is probably maybe even still in the 6th spot. I don't know, but I don't know.
Maybe I'm not communicating my feelings clearly, because I'm not saying, like, no matter what happened this season we would be here. I don't think that, but I'm just kind of resigned to the fact that this is now the reality of this team, at least for the rest of the season, because the confidence is just completely gone. I just don't think getting Jalen Suggs back, as great of a player as I think he is and as impactful as I believe he is, I don't think that Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Gary Harris, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, all of these guys are going to be shooting league average the rest of the way moving forward. Like, we need them to be successful.
Yes, I agree with that. And I'll just tack on to that then. Like, for me, the ceiling for this season is you win the play-in. You get healthy as you can be without Mo. Jalen's back. You get a little bit of mojo. You win the play-in, whether it's the 7 or the 8 seed, and you make life really miserable for your first round opponent, whether it's Cleveland or Boston, and you push them to 6 or 7 games.
What do you classify as miserable? Do you think
6
they
or
can
7
be really
games.
Miserable? 6 or 7? Because, like,
I think the ceiling. I
think Cleveland or Boston could be really miserable but still beat us in 4 or 5.
Sure, but I'm saying that's my ceiling at this point. Like, the second round is gone. Like, it's not even on my radar anymore. The 6th seed and making the actual playoffs automatically, like I said earlier, is just about off my radar. Probably a week from now it will be. So yeah, my ceiling for this season is you win the play-in and you push the first round to 6 or 7 games. And
I just don't know how you do that without being able to make shots. Because last year, like against Cleveland, we couldn't make shots on the road, but guys were making shots at home.
Right.
They can't make shots anywhere.
I'm not saying I'm picking that. I'm saying that's my ceiling. Sure. That's the absolute best that I think is possible. And that's a big change from where I was in October, you know?
Yeah. It's just, it sucks. I feel like we're 500 episodes in. I feel like we've had 500 episodes of just talking about how this team can't shoot and how the offense is terrible. Like this season, and we love doing this, but this season has just felt like it's been going on for so long. But on the other hand, it's like, how do we only have 22 games left? Like, how are we, 6 weeks away from the regular season being over at this point? It feels kind of crazy.
It does. Yeah. But Magic fans might need to clear their calendar that week between April 13th, the end of the regular season, April 19th, the beginning of the playoffs. Might need to clear out your Tuesday, Wednesday there for some play-in action.
Just stay out of the 9-10. Like, I don't think I can deal with 2 play-in games. Like having like 2 do or die games to be able to get in. I really don't think I could handle that. Just like mentally and emotionally. But
hosting a 7-8 would be pretty fun, which right now I would consider the Magic to be almost the driver's seat to host the 7-8 game. Like that would be kind of fun.
You have
Sorta.
2 games
Fun
left
is
versus
relative.
Atlanta.
Yeah. Atlanta's about to lose again tonight. They're getting, but they are losing to the Heat. So I guess you can put a win in the column for Miami, but I don't know. Yeah. I feel like they can walk away with the 7th seed, but I felt a lot of things this season. So who knows?
Yeah. And like just speaking to Magic fans' frustration, like just yet another national televised game where we're like, hey, like the Magic, beginning of the season, the Magic aren't getting enough attention. They don't have enough nationally televised games. Like, you're not going to hear me complain at all when the Magic have 1 or 2 nationally televised games next year. One, because like I don't think they've like really earned more than that at this point. And like, I don't know that I even want this team on national TV right now until they can figure out like even how to get up for those games. And it sucks. Like I didn't watch the broadcast, but I've seen numerous tweets and people talking about Stan Van Gundy, just like speaking over and over to like how bad the offense was and talking about, you know, some of the roster construction. No David Steele, no Jeff Turner for this game. What were your thoughts of the broadcast, Kevin, and Stan Van Gundy calling this game?
It was fine. I'm a big Iron Eagle fan. I think he's great. Stan didn't say anything. I was about to say he didn't say anything incorrect, but he did mispronounce Franz's name. So he did. But I'm saying basketball wise, he didn't say anything out of line. Like he's right. Like our offense is hard to watch sometimes, you know? I mean, what are you going to do? So yeah, it was fine. It didn't bother me at all. Now, the pregame show being all about Luka and Dallas and never talking about the Magic Cavs game. I mean, on the one hand, I do understand it, right? Like it's Luka hosting the Mavs. Like that's a pretty big deal. But the other part of me was like, come on, talk about the Magic at least for a second. But anyway, no, it was fine.
All right. We'll lighten the mood here a little bit. Again, 500 episodes. Not that there's like a damper on it or anything, because it's still like to think about doing something that takes as much time and effort and consistency as doing 500 episodes of this. Like at times, where newsflash, the team has not always been really good. Like the first 3-4 years of the pod, the team was super fun last year, and the pod was super fun to do last year with winning a bunch of games and just feeling like we were playing with house money. But yeah, it is not lost on us of like the timing of our 500th episode and having Jamahl Mosley on. Like we talked with him, like obviously we all wish we were in the middle of like a 17 game win streak. But yeah, last year was awesome. We had like the 5-year anniversary pod. We had episode 400 where we had Paolo Banchero on. And like during all that stuff, like we went through the origins of the show, and there were tears and all kinds of stuff thanks to Kevin Tucker and ambushing me with a video of my lovely wife. But yeah, I don't know that I want to go through all of that, because for some reason that stuff still feels kind of like fresh in my mind. But just super grateful. Like I would love to know if there's anybody out there who has listened to all episodes of every 501.
There's no way. There's no way.
There's no way. No. And dude, when I go back and I listen to the earlier episodes, it was so bad. Like this is a testament. And I don't know that like this isn't the greatest pod in the world, right? We think it's pretty darn good. But when you go back, like just how much more comfortable I know that I am, and we've kind of found like a good flow on how to do all this stuff. But just to say, like the first episodes are really terrible, and I literally cannot listen to them. It is just pure cringe core.
Well, I would hope you get better at something after doing it 500 times.
Right.
So
that's kind of the point that I was trying to make without sounding like an idiot. But yeah, man, I think we express this all the time. People, our listeners and our viewers and our followers, I hope you all have a pretty good idea of how we feel about you. None of this is possible or even like makes sense to do without people listening. Like Kevin and I could easily just call each other on the phone and talk about the Magic, and all that kind of stuff for, a couple of hours, but all the other stuff that goes into it and things that we try to do, like bring experiences to Magic fans and have conversations that we think you all would like to hear. Like what I like about some of my favorite podcasts is like, it just feels like I'm talking with friends about something that I'm really passionate about. And that's always been the goal, of doing what we're doing. And I would just like to say a thank you, obviously, to our followers and people that listen and watch, but also a huge thank you to this guy here, as I just threw something on the floor there. But a big thank you to Kevin, who puts up with me and does this each and every week with me, and the countless hours of planning and doing all the stuff and kind of post-production. None of this would happen with Kevin, obviously. Luke, who everybody knows has been a massive part of what we've done over the years. My best friend, Will Robles, who has been my best friend since the first grade, and who I never would have started the pod with. Like, if I didn't have somebody to do the pod with initially, I don't think I ever would have started it. And then obviously, my wife, who I really never would have started the pod without her suggesting it, and none of it would be possible. I would be the biggest loser, deadbeat dad and absent father and absent husband if it were not for my wife doing all of the amazing things that she does and giving me the privilege to spend so much of my time doing this. But yeah, Kev, I'm just super grateful for, everybody that's helped along the way, our entire team, with the 6-man show. You all know who you are. Just really, really grateful. And it's just crazy, again, to think about 500 episodes.
Yeah. And shout out to you, man. You started with a dream 6 years ago now, and 500 episodes later. And it's crazy to think, not just 500 episodes, but we had like 19 episodes of our little spin-off show that, we tried and didn't work. But so you could add 19 episodes of that. Think about, we're well over 100 post-game lives now. We're over, I'm sure,
we're going to be close to like 150 at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Gotta be like thinking of like the pre-games.
It was like 93
preseason
93
stuff
last
and
year.
playoff games.
Right, yeah, 93 last year plus 60 plus 3. So a lot. Probably 30 something 6 fan shows, so like there's been a lot of content we've been able to put out.
20, 30 watch parties and lottery watch parties and group nights and all that kind of stuff. Like,
but yeah, big shout out to you for having this idea. And I would imagine that when you had this idea, this is not even really what you envisioned. Like, not even just like the scope of the show, but like you said, like all the other stuff, the extra stuff that we do now, which is pretty fun. So, what were you gonna say?
Oh no, I was just gonna, like, thinking back, like, I don't even remember what I thought the pod could be. Like, it was just really like a fun thing to do, and I thought maybe I would like meet more Magic fans. Like, a lot of the things that we've had the privilege to do, which like we don't take for granted at all. If you would have told me like we would be able to do a 10th of the things that we've been able to accomplish due to people like caring and listening to the show, I would have absolutely been mind blown. But on the flip side, had I known like just how hard some of this stuff was going to be and like how much time it would take, and I don't know that I would have got started. So it's kind of one of those things where like, ignorance is bliss. And like once I got into it, it was like, well, I love it too much. Like, yeah, it's hard and it's not super easy at times, but like I love it too much to stop.
Yeah. I think one last thing, obviously it wouldn't be a special episode without a little, I'm just kidding. I don't have any surprises. That's it.
Thank God. Like literally. Yeah.
No, I've got nothing other than happy 500, man.
Yeah. Happy 500. Yeah. For some reason, I pulled up the 5-year anniversary pod from last year, like the live show that we did. And like the surprise of like Tony joining the show. And then you're like, oh, I have one more surprise. And then it was like just that like kind of montage, and was just watching that and reminiscing, because obviously the stuff from the last year is kind of fresh in my mind, but like watching that back, like there's a ton of stuff that I forgot, that like me putting a Fry Lover's burger from Checkers like in the camera for whatever reason. I don't even know why I did that. And then the video that you guys had different people make and you had Carmen make, I was literally like tearing up. I walked out of my office tonight before we had dinner and Carmen's like, why are you crying? I'm like, I just decided to watch the montage from last year for whatever reason, and she thought I was completely ridiculous. But yeah, happy 500, and here's to the next 500. To think about where I was in my life and where the team was, like I kind of shudder to think about where all of that will be, in episode 1000, and hopefully we'll be reminiscing on championships by that time. Who really knows?
Please. Yeah.
Well, we wanted to do this sort of towards the end of the show. So those of you who have a sentimental attachment to the show and are celebrating 500 with us, we could kind of save that all to the end. But one thing that I have a surprise for Kevin, not going to be a surprise that Kevin likes, but there's something that has just been on my mind that usually we don't give a lot of attention to. And Kevin doesn't want me to give attention to this, but I'm going to give attention to the clowns. Over the course of the last couple of months, I would say, since things have been going sideways with the Magic, people say things on social media to us all the time. Like, you can pick any point to a time on the clock, pick a date on the calendar. There is always somebody saying something negative to us, whether it be on social media or in our YouTube comments. It's just kind of the nature of doing what we do. And you just naturally develop a thick skin over time, and you kind of let those things roll off your back. But like, a man can only take so much negativity and can only be accused of doing certain things so many times. So I'm not going to address anyone specifically because they don't deserve that attention. But for anyone out there who is wondering whether we are like in the Orlando Magic's pocket, or we're just sort of these like fair, weather fans, and the only thing that we see is the good things about this team, you don't listen to our show. And if you are listening, you're not really hearing what we're saying. And trust me, Kevin and I would love nothing more than to be paid by the Orlando Magic to do what we're doing now. And that is not the case. We share our honest opinions at times to our detriment, because it's genuinely what we think. So anybody out there that accuses us of not covering this team fairly, like, if you don't agree with our perspective, that's one thing. But to accuse us of like actively hiding the way that we feel about things for whatever reason that you want to come up with in your mind, it doesn't exist. And again, Kevin would prefer that I wouldn't draw any attention to this whatsoever.
No, I'm with you on this one.
It's become really, really annoying. Again, and when you accuse us of things like that, it's just very evident that you don't actually listen to what we're saying. And if you're going to criticize us, you're going to call us idiots, you're going to do whatever. The only thing that I would ask is just be fair about it and actually listen to the things that we're saying, read the content that we're putting out, because some of it is just completely baseless and idiotic. And today I had time. Like, usually we just say we're going to ignore it. It's not worth the time. I'm annoyed today, and I felt like taking the time to tell you that you're morons.
Yeah. First off, I'm 100% with you. I'm totally cool with this. Those two things bother me the most. I think, like you said, that people think that we're in the Magic's pocket, which is just could not be further from the truth, by the way. Absolutely not. No. But secondly, the one that bothers me the most is when people say that, like, if you're a real fan, you wouldn't think that way or whatever. Like saying that we're not real fans that's the one that actually, I do have a very thick skin, but that one really gets under my skin because, again,
which now we're going to get flooded with comments that we're not real fans.
That's fine. I can appreciate the sarcasm, but like the amount of time and energy and sacrifice that this takes, that what we're doing right now, is pretty indicative of our fan level. And so, yeah, that one is offensive to me, and I can't stand it. So, yeah, we are real fans. Just because we might have a different opinion than you doesn't make us not real fans, because we're as real as they come. Let's be honest. We're as diehard as they come. And I know a lot of you are too. And so, yeah, the keyboard warriors, like, whatever. It is what it is. They're going to think what they think. But, yeah, those two things could not be further from the truth. We are real fans, and we are not in anybody's pocket.
I met a fan once at a game. I forget what their name was, but they introduced me to a friend of theirs who is not like really familiar with like the show, which is totally fine, obviously. But the guy introduced me, was like, "Hey, this guy's almost as big of a fan as I am." Like, he was like, kind of tongue in cheek saying that he was a bigger Magic fan. And my response to any time that anybody criticizes my fandom is like, "Where's the tat at?" Right? Mm-hmm. Like, if you don't have the tat, don't be questioning my fandom, right? Like, I have it inked on my body forever. And that's not to say somebody who doesn't have a tat, of the Magic is somehow less a fan, but you can't criticize my fan when I literally have the logo branded on my body.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I could,
we could do a whole episode, Jonathan. We could do a whole episode on this, honestly.
We really, really could. And
we won't.
I don't want people to take this as like, we think we're better than other fans. Like that could not be any further than the truth. Part of the society that we live in where there are these like parasocial relationships that we have with people online where we think we really know them based off the content that we make. Like I understand that. Like I love a lot of content creators and you do kind of feel like you know them to a certain extent. But when you hear me talk about the Magic or you hear me talk about, the way that other fans feel about things and you try to draw a conclusion of like who we are as people, like whenever people criticize things like that, the reason that it doesn't really get to me other than points like this where it is, annoying and I just want to talk about it on the pod for a few minutes and rant about it. Like this stuff does not keep us up at night because I know like these people just clearly have no idea who I am. And the thing that is always like, if you met me in person, one, you would never talk to me the way that you're talking to me or talking about us on social media. It's just like a weird thing that people do. But you would understand, like, I'm not the way that you think I am. Like, I love people. I love Magic fans. We want this team to have more fans. Like, that's really the whole reason that we do this. But yeah, I just be chill. Don't be an idiot on the internet. Like, I think that's just kind of a rule of thumb for life in general. And hopefully you just turn this episode off 10 minutes ago and haven't listened to this rant. But yeah,
I was going to say, just because the team is bad doesn't mean your character should take a dip either. Right. Like that's the other thing. Like this wasn't, it was
I
happening
gotta tell
a little bit.
Some people, their character isn't dipping. They're just bringing it to light.
Correct. But I'm saying like last year, obviously there's always this stuff. Last year, there wasn't this much stuff as there has been in the last month, really, which is disappointing. But it's fine. It's just sports, though. It's just sports, guys. Let's just enjoy it, have fun,
and the other thing that I realize is that the internet is not real life, right?
Really?
Like, yeah. Newsflash, it's not like. And I know a lot of people like. I don't know if it was COVID or what happened where people just aren't as like connected socially, like in person anymore. And people are like chronically online, but like you have to get out of that. Like Magic Twitter, I get messages from my friends who just like scroll Magic Twitter for, the laughs each day. And a lot of people just cannot believe like how negative and toxic of a place it has become. And I get it to a certain extent. We all care about this team. You're passionate. You invest a lot of your time and energy into the team, watching games, listening to podcasts, going to games, spending your hard-earned money. So I get like feeling negative about where the team is. We do too. But it's just some of the people that are just so crazily, just nasty is I guess the best way that I would put it. But that's helped me over the years in remembering that like, hey, like the internet is not a real place. People don't act in real life the way that they act on the internet. People aren't going to talk to you in real life the way they talk to you on the internet. As Kevin and I were getting ready to release or record this episode, and we know we're releasing the Jamahl Mosley interview, we're like, well, I wonder kind of what the reception is going to be because of what's been going on with the team and the way that people are talking on social media. And some people are like, oh, I hope you did this. I hope you yelled at him. It's like, dude, that's not how life works. One, you would also never speak to Jamahl Mosley the way that you're telling us to. And part of what we do is like relationship based. We can't ask to have the head coach of the Orlando Magic on and then tell him that he sucks and he's not doing a good job and all that kind of stuff. One, we don't actually genuinely believe that stuff. Some of you do, and you want us to say that. But how can you ask someone to take time away from their day off when they're spending time with their family to then come onto our show for us to crap on them? Like, that's just not something that a decent human being does. So I hope some of you out there have taken the time to listen to this and maybe will like reevaluate just the way that you treat and talk to and think about human beings as if they're not a living, breathing human being. And the way that you talk about some of these athletes online, like, again, I don't mean to be like high and mighty on our high horse, but like there are people that are just like genuinely nasty human beings. And that doesn't make us better than you, but like that's not a great, like enjoyable way to live your life. And I just genuinely want better for you. I'm a piece of crap myself. I don't think I'm better than anybody, but like it's just not a great way to go about living your life. And there is more for you in life than just spewing hatred on the internet constantly.
Yeah. Or asking other people to spew hatred, because we were never going to do that. We were never going to.
Yeah.
Even if, let's just say, hypothetically, that Jamahl Mosley really is just the worst. Like some of these people say, oh, he's the worst, whatever. Even if that is the case, even if we agreed with that, we still wouldn't talk to him like that. Like that's not how we operate. It's just, again, we're human beings and we try to be kind to everybody. And that includes basketball coaches when you're on a losing streak. Like it's just, that doesn't change for us. And so, yeah, the comments were, wow. Again, when I say the comments, most of them were very like congratulatory. Congrats on 500 episodes. Getting head coach of the Magic is amazing, all that kind of stuff. But they were just a handful. It's just like, no, we're never going to talk to anyone like that, much less the head coach of our favorite team.
And like, we're not like, oh, we got Jamahl Mosley. Look at us. Like, we're like super grateful. And like, we can't believe that we had Jamahl Mosley on. And we're so privileged to be able to do what we do. And the thing is, like, again, these people who, there are certain characters that I've had multiple interactions with over the years, on social media, or, seen things that people have said. But if you met me in life, like in real life, I would still be kind to you and try to express to you that unfortunately, I'm a people pleaser, like to a fault in life. And I would just try to express to you like my perspective and why I see things the way that, maybe it might be different than you. So yeah, anyways, I think I've said all that I can say on this topic.
Jonathan, this is our 500 episode. I think it's going to be our longest episode ever. I think we're breaking records here.
It's going to be our longest episode ever, because this is. Yeah. I thought this was going to be like a 3-minute thing. I didn't think that you were going to hop on board with it, but here we are. So
all aboard.
What do you say we wrap this one up?
Probably a good idea. Yeah,
probably a good idea. So, anyways, appreciate all of you. Hey, and we love the haters. Like
Oh yeah.
Any publicity is good publicity, as the old adage goes. Whether you love us, whether you hate us, we appreciate you listening to the show. We appreciate you listening to 500 or 400 or 300 or 200, however many episodes that you listen to. And yeah, we're just super grateful that we get to do this. And we hope we get to continue to do it for a long, long time. But yeah, this is going to wrap up our 500th and our longest episode of all time. For Kevin Tucker, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!